All right, guys, we're back with more fantasy baseball content, and here I'm going to grade my breakout players for the 2025 season. I identified 20 breakouts heading into the season, a bunch of pitchers, a bunch of hitters, and I'm going to go back through my process right now, see where I went right, see where I went wrong, and see how maybe I can improve next year to give you guys a lot more breakout superstars before your drafts. I want to shout out one of my favorite content creators out there, Foolish Baseball, for his other channel, Foolish Bailey, where he does this every single year, grading his breakout picks. I'm going to copy his same scale he uses. It's a 5-point scale, 0 being in the middle. I can go as high as +2 and as far down as -2. So if you guys have found me, you've probably already found Foolish, but I have all the links for his stuff down there below. And again, thank you, Foolish, for this format because I'm going to use it well here. So I'm going to start my breakout pitchers because I think that's where I like to talk about more. That's also where I did a lot better this preseason. And the way I structured my breakout in that initial video that came out last March is that I had 5 guys who I thought could be potential aces and 5 guys who I considered sleepers. So I'm going to grade these guys on a slightly different scale depending on whether or not I called them a potential ace or a sleeper. So that'll come out in this conversation. But first up is Brian Wu, who I thought this guy could easily be a top 10 pitcher in the league based on his command, based on his fastball quality, and if he can just find a little bit more breaking ball consistency, which has been a little bit hard for him from his arm slot. Funny enough, the breaking ball consistency never came. It was still all just fastballs and command, and Brian Wu was literally a top 5 pitcher in all of baseball this year. Completely unhittable, had a ridiculous 6 innings pitch streak, was one of the most consistent and steady guys in the entire league, wound up again as SP4, and really all it took from Wu was staying healthy. So there's oddly still more upside on Brian Wu. But again, I'm happy with this. He became an ace. I'm giving myself a nice clean +2 for Brian Wu. Next up was Joe Ryan, who I also thought could approach ace status if he kept his same fastball quality and continued to build on the repertoire that he's been building the last few years with his sweeper and his splitter especially. All of that happened. Joe Ryan pitched a complete season. He was one of the top pitchers in the league in terms of whip. His ERA was okay, but he still had a lot of strikeouts, didn't walk many batters, was basically the only all-season consistent performer in the Minnesota Twins rotation. I know they were bad with him, but they would have been like a 50-win team without him when it was all said and done. He also got to a career-high 171 innings pitched while keeping his fastball velocity around 94 miles an hour, which is a big spot for him because with his good extension and with his very flat approach angle, that 94 gets swings and misses in the strike zone like someone who throws 98 or 99 miles per hour could. This is a guy that was a borderline top 100 pick heading into the season, and he performed like a top 10 pitcher in the whole league. Another big +2 for Joe Ryan. Next up, I had Jared Jones. I love Jared Jones, blazing fastball, but Jared Jones did not pitch this season. He got Tommy John surgery, so this sadly has to get an incomplete rating for me. Then we have another one that's kind of incomplete, which I'm sad about because it has the potential to be one of my favorite pitchers in the league. It's Reese Olson of the Tigers. Olson had a weird finger injury this year where Olson has a right-handed pitcher, which is weird, but he's so reliant on his changeup that when he hurt his ring finger, it took him weeks and weeks and weeks to get that finger back to a spot where he could actually pitch consistently. Because again, that changeup, that ring finger is the most important thing for how he grips it. Then right when he came back, he developed a shoulder strain that wound up knocking him out for the entire year. So while Reese Olson didn't pitch much this season, he did pitch pretty well when he was on the mound. But with the incomplete from getting injured and also not taking the full ace step forward, I know the ERA looks ace-ish, but also the underlying stats don't look ace-ish. The strikeouts didn't tick up like I expected them to. While the breaking ball command and the secondary still were very good, he mixed his sinker in a lot more, which I liked a lot. I'm going to give myself a +1 for Olson because when he was on the mound, he still performed like a very solid pitcher, just wasn't on the mound enough. Then my last pitcher in the potential ace tier was Gavin Williams, who based on volume, got pretty close to ace level. Based on ERA, got very close to ace level. It was a real topsy-turvy season to get him to that spot. He developed a new sweeper that became a real weapon for him against right-handed batters and kept building on his sinker. Those two pitches together were really key for him against right-handed batters. I thought the cutter would be a bigger deal, especially when you face lefties, but he didn't really throw that a ton and was still this effective over this much volume. Also really cool for Williams, he was kind of the key reason that the Guardians were able to go on their furious second half run, especially through August and September, to catch the Tigers and win the American League Central. In the second half, Gavin Williams had a 2.18 ERA over 70 innings pitched with a 28% strikeout rate. And I remember that no-hitter he took into the 9th inning into the field against the Mets. I was at that game. That really did feel like a symbolic moment for this Guardians team. This belief that they can play with anybody and that Gavin Williams was truly becoming a frontline guy. He still walked too many guys, the whip was still high, and it does hint at the fact his ERA will likely rise back up next year. But the four-seam fastball in the upper 90s, the curveball, the new sweeper, and the sinker, this is suddenly a guy that can get anybody out. And again, we saw him do this over the second half. I'm giving myself a +2 for Gavin Williams. I'm very curious about how he's priced next year in drafts. Now we're moving on to the sleeper pitchers for my breakout video. Number 1 was Spencer Arrighetti. This might have been my worst call of the whole season. I took a hot second half in 2024 and tons of breaking balls with improving command on them, and I was like, wow, this is a guy that could really easily be a mid-rotation cog in any rotation. Then in April, he broke his thumb in a freak accident during a batting practice injury when he was just shagging fly balls. He just got hit in the hand, and then he came back. I doubled down on my love for Arrighetti. I was like, just because the thumb injury was a bone thing, completely healed, elbow's fine, shoulders fine, we should be ready to go. I really promoted him on this channel mid-season, and he was horrific when he came back from injury. One of the worst pitchers in baseball, so have to be held accountable there. It's a -2 for Spencer Arrighetti. Moving on past Arrighetti, we have Grant Holmes. I liked Grant Holmes. I liked the development of his changeup. I liked the slider that he had. I liked the fact that he trusted his fastball in the zone. He sometimes didn't trust his fastball in the zone as much as I would have liked. The walk rate rose for Grant Holmes this year, and he wound up having a season-ending injury over the summer. But he still pitched 115 innings of pretty solid ball. Way better than anyone probably expected out of Grant Holmes, so I'm going to give myself a +1 for him. Next up, we have one of my favorite calls from my sleepers, and it was Jack Leither on the Rangers. Leither actually sneakily kind of did break out this season. Even just having 150 innings pitched when ERA under 4 is so amazing considering where he was a year ago when people question if he could even be a major league starting pitcher, especially considering how up and down he'd been those first few years at the Rangers, even struggling in the upper minors. But it really all happened. And the thing I was most excited about by Leither heading into the season was him expanding his repertoire so he can kind of hide his command flaws. And that came out in a big way because he developed a sinker that became a huge weapon for him against right-handed batters, and a kick change, which against the lefties was really effective throughout the whole season. The command, especially of that changeup, waxed and waned a bit, but altogether, it did make Leither a true middle rotation guy in real life. That being said, he didn't really take a massive step forward in terms of effectiveness, where again, he still ERA hovered around 4. Sometimes he didn't have the strikeouts, and sometimes there were a lot of walks. So if you guys aren't playing the deepest of fantasy leagues, he wasn't that big of a factor. Just for the fact he got through the entire season, I'll give myself a +1 for Jack Leither. Next up, we have Tyler McGill and the Mets. And I was very excited about Tyler McGill heading into the season. I saw the way he ended 2024 on a high note, being a key cog through the Mets' end of the regular season to get them to the playoffs. Not pitching great in the playoffs, but again, he's changing his role. Coming into this year, he had more fastball velocity. He had a new slider that he developed. I liked a lot. Thought it could be a weapon against hitters from both sides of the plate. And through the beginning, April and May, Tyler McGill was very effective. Then as we got into June, Tyler McGill started to struggle. He started to do the thing he's always done. The Mets fans know very well, where he would nibble, kind of be afraid, even though his stuff is so good, the challenge hitters in the strike zone. It was all kind of falling apart a bit for McGill. Then he got a serious elbow injury. Now eventually he's due for Tommy John surgery. And as that happened, he left the Mets rotation. They kind of crumbled without him. Just having a guy in the back of your rotation you can count on for like a 3.8 ERA is really useful in real life. So because he only threw 65 innings this year, and they were just fine with almost an ERA around 4, I'm going to give myself a 0 for this. But it was really close. If McGill did that for twice as many innings, probably could have squeaked out a +1, but I can't do that right now. And then last up, definitely the worst call I made among all pitchers, Hayden Birdsong. Wow, I thought he was going to win the Giants' 5th starter spot coming out of spring training. He didn't. He lost that to Landon Roop. And then when he got the starter's role in the middle of May, he was terrible. In 2 months as a starter for the Giants, he had an ERA over 6 and a 14% walk rate. He wasn't even close to being an effective pitcher this year. For that, Hayden Birdsong gets a -2. And then really briefly, before we move on to the bats, I want to shout out some of the honorable mentions I had for pitchers. I cast a really wide net with my honorable mentions. I think I mentioned like 12 guys, and they went all the way from Mackenzie Gore to Jose Soriano, guys who were on radars. But 2 guys who I promoted in that section, I don't think were really on anybody's radars, who wound up being huge contributors this season. Cam Schlittler, yeah, I was talking about Cam Schlittler last March. Kind of insane. I saw the back of the Yankees rotation being a weakness, and seeing a guy like Schlittler, who'd performed well in the upper minors, who had major league quality stuff, contributing, and he certainly contributed. And also Ryan Nelson, who wound up being so consistent with a really low ERA all year for the Diamondbacks. I'm giving myself an extra +2 just for simply identifying these guys in those honorable mentions. And we're going to forget the fact that I talked about Kumar Rocker and Luis Ortiz in those. So we total up all of the guys here for the pitching side. I wound up being a +7. Kind of crushed it with my pitching breakouts this year. Really proud of that one. All right, now we're moving on to the bats, where my #1 breakout coming to the season, I talked about this guy ad nauseum through draft season. It was O'Neal Cruz on the Pirates. I was so ready for the play discipline gains to marry the power, come with the burgeoning speed, and we would get something like a first-round asset in fantasy baseball. The speed came. He almost led the league in stolen bases. But wow, the bat was not there at all. He barely held his average at the Mendoza line. His OPS started with a 6. His on-base percentage was horrific. He was so bad that he was kind of bordering on, should this guy be a starter in Major League Baseball? Which is crazy because with the physical abilities that he has, it really seems like this comes down to just focusing on a pitch-by-pitch basis and making sure that your contact rate can just get close enough to being near league average to let that power work for you. And with all that being said, I'm sadly probably going to be back on the O'Neal Cruz bandwagon this offseason coming into drafts. I'm going to be ready to take that risk once again. He doesn't chase like crazy. He also doesn't swing that much anymore. When he swings, he misses everything. He also took major strides as a center fielder while still having a bunch of boneheaded plays out there. And again, now it seems like we do have a stolen base floor that's above 30, which will anchor his value somewhat. But I have to give myself a -2 because of how positively I talked about O'Neal Cruz. If you guys have been here since the beginning, you definitely remember that and how poorly he actually performed. Next up is a big hit for me, though. James Wood and the Nationals. James Wood, for half the season, performed like a true MVP caliber player. In the first half, it really did feel like he'd compete for the MVP award. We had a 915 OPS. He was heading to the All-Star game, the Home Run Derby. It felt like a star was truly being born. But then, James Wood cratered in the second half and had a 690 OPS after the All-Star break. That is a guy that's not really a starting caliber player if you were a 690 OPS guy. Of course, we know that that's just a prolonged cold streak for a guy like James Wood, who has a lot of swing and miss in his game, who had played more baseball this year than ever before because the minor league seasons are shorter. So coming off half a season in the majors last year, a full season in the majors this year, it did seem like his body kind of gave out by the end of the year. So maybe it's about James Wood fixing his conditioning, fixing some of his habits, just being in better shape, taking care of his body better, while at the same time letting these skills work for him. Because you guys see the stat line. He was a menace this year when he was hot. And we kind of have to expect the heavy swing and miss profile for a guy like James Wood, even though he has good play discipline, swings at the right pitches to lead to prolonged hot and cold streaks. It's just part of the game. He even did finally pull some balls this year in the air. Not a ton still. We still love to see him pull more, but he has such godly power that even if he's not pulling the ball while he's still in this physical prime early in his career, he'll be totally fine as a power hitter. He also pulled the nose back up in September, which I did like to see a young player like James Wood, a national team that was playing for nothing, had a full exodus of their manager and their coaching staff and their general manager. And James Wood had months and months of struggling. Would be an easy time for young players to quit. But again, that month of September was good for him. That was really impressive mentally. And by the end of the season in fantasy baseball, he was a top 12 outfielder. So I identified you guys in outfield one who was being drafted rounds and rounds after those guys went off the board. Give myself +2 for James Wood. Then I'll be honest with you guys, my hitting breakouts, a little bit of a mess. I really went for a lot of times. I wanted pedigree. I wanted big prospects. I wanted to get their breakouts. I identified Jackson Holliday and Dylan Cruz. Holliday played the whole year. There was no step forward. The power kind of faded back into a more contact-oriented profile. He still managed 17 homers, 17 steals, but low batting average, low on-base percentage. Played bad defense at second base, too. Weird thing for Jackson Holliday. I don't know how much I believe heading into the next year. Probably a little bit, but the stars definitely dampened. And then Dylan Cruz, horrific start to the season. Got a little hot in the middle, then had an oblique injury and knocked him out for months. And he came back and he wasn't that good again either. Also, wasn't stealing the bases, wasn't hitting for power, wasn't making contact. All the things I liked about Dylan Cruz, he wasn't doing. Similar to Jackson Holliday when he had the big power at second base. So I don't know what to think about these guys. I'm going to give myself zeros for both. Jackson Holliday, I'll give myself a -1. Dylan Cruz, I'll give myself a 0 because he did miss most of the year due to injury. You know what? I'll give -1 for each of them. I got to be fair. -1 for each. Not disastrous, but really big misses. Then we have 2 huge misses. These were disastrous. Joey Ortiz and Jordan Walker. Me identifying them as breakouts is a little bit embarrassing looking back because Joey Ortiz was the worst qualified hitter in baseball. Literally. His 593 OPS is the worst in the league. Easy -2. Great with the glove, but such a non-factor in fantasy baseball, it's not even funny. And then Jordan Walker, I'm always going to hope and pray on Jordan Walker. He's still so young at 23 years old. The bat speed is still so good, and he did have 1 year of Major League Baseball already where he was above average hitter. I can't let go of that. But this year was really bad again. It was so bad that in the first week of October, he was already posting videos of him at Driveline training for next year. Another -2 for Jordan Walker because, wow, this one was very off. Next hitter here, looking back, I don't even know why I threw this kind of breakout. I was way too confident in him. Nolan Schiano. I like the fact that he was hitting the ball harder. I like the fact that he was swinging harder. But it was so nominal compared to where he was in the past. It was still just so blah for first base profile in fantasy. Total non-factor. Still swings a pool noodle. Does a lot of stuff decently well in real baseball. Like, he'll always be a high on-base percentage guy. But again, gotta give myself a -1 for Nolan Schiano just for being that far off fantasy radars the entire season. Next, one of my best calls, Ivan Herrera on the Cardinals. Became one of the best hitting catchers in all of baseball this season. Had power, a little bit of speed, high batting average. Really was one of the few shining lights in this Cardinals lineup all year. Did miss a lot of time due to injury, but again, if you took Ivan Herrera all the way at the back of your draft or picked him up off the waiver wire early and were able to stash him, you got one of the best hitting catchers in the league. Funny enough, he didn't even catch enough this year to be catcher eligible in most leagues next year, so he's going to be a utility-only guy, which definitely kills his value. But for this year, for predicting that breakout, that's another +2 for me for Ivan Herrera. 2 guys left here, the first one being Matt Wallner on the Twins. I just loved the swing decisions and the gaudy power from Matt Wallner. I was ready for him to have a bigger role in an exodus for the Twins this year. I knew they were going to be a less talented team. That bigger role came to fruition. Most plate appearances he's ever had in his career. And with that, the worst results. Part of the reason for that is because he had more plate appearances this year against left-handed pitchers than he had in the past 2 years combined, but also he was not as strong against righties. The whole thing kind of just got worse. And a big reason why it got worse, which is scary, is that Matt Wallner was challenged more often in the zone. I think a lot of other pitchers would game plan around Wallner in the past because he knew he was a part-time player, but the whole thing was power. So maybe you spend a little bit less time thinking about him. Just see if you can make him chase. He trained himself to not chase. He would do walks or homers. It was a great system. This year, his zone rate jumped up a good bit, and with that, his quality of contact kind of fell a little bit. So as pitchers spent a little bit more time thinking about him, game planning for him, preparing for him, challenge him more often, he got worse. With that, it was still a fine season from him, one that was not going to hurt you, so I'm giving myself a 0 for Matt Wallner. But just wasn't a breakout, but he still held the line. And then lastly, my best call of all the hitters, Ben Rice on the Yankees, Ben Aros. Because wow, what an insane season from Ben Rice. Ben Rice, when you look at him, this guy had the 13th highest OPS in the entire American League. That's ridiculous. Even still a part-time player, the Yankees still tried to shield him against lefties, but there's still everything here to have a potential star as a hitter. The swing decisions are incredible. He lifts the ball. He pulls the ball. The power is unbelievable. Like, this truthfully profiles as a potential all-star at first base for years to come. Like, this is the crispiest, the freshest baseball savant red bubble page, I think maybe of any hitter that's not a super-duper star in the entire league. So big on Ben Rice. I'm going to be big on him again next year. A nice +2 for Ben Rice, which does sadly bring my total for hitters still down to a -3. Really bad with the bats, but the +7 I had with the arms, give myself a +4 on breakouts in 2025. I'll take that. And with this, I'm really excited to get my breakouts going for next year once we get to draft season. But we still got time before then. Thank you guys so much for being here, supporting the channel. Appreciate you guys for being here, interacting with all the look back coverage. Again, we're going to be doing this for a few more weeks, then start to get to the 2026 season soon. But thank you again. I'll see you next time.